Hi, I'm Raquel Lily, and today we're going to be teaching you the basics on how to play the guitar. Be sure to check out adorama.com to get the best deals. Whether it's recording video and audio at home, setting up your live stream, or getting some music gear, Adorama has it all. So the first thing I want to talk about is the ergonomics of the guitar and how to hold it properly. First off, you want to make sure that the guitar is parallel to your lap. You want to make sure it's nice and straight. You don't want to be bending it down or sideways or whatever. Another thing that's common for beginners to do is you're trying to see what you're doing on the fretboard, and you might want to bend your guitar so that you could see your fingers and whatever's happening over here. But you want to make sure you're keeping the guitar pretty straight on and, like I said, parallel to your leg. And lastly, you want to have pretty good posture, meaning sitting up straight. Once you master the basic posture of the guitar, you're good to go. So let's talk about the parts of the guitar starting from the top. This is your headstock, which is attached to these tuning keys right here, and the tuning keys control these tuning pegs right here, and then the tuning pegs are actually what twist and turn and tune the strings that they're attached to. So you notice that they're all attached down this fretboard. So this whole thing right here, this long neck, is the fretboard. It's called a fretboard because there are frets on the board. So these spaces are called frets. And when people say fret 1, fret 2, fret 3, this is basically the first fret, second fret, third fret, and so on and so forth. So if you notice, on the guitar there are these dots, or on some guitars they're decorative, so they might be birds or flowers or whatever. And these dots are fret markers or fret inlays, and they're here to help guitarists find their way around the fretboard. So if you memorize exactly where these dots are, which you could see on the top of the guitar, up here, here, they'll help you figure out where the chord is without having to look really closely at your guitar every time you want to play a chord. So attached to the fretboard is your body. So your guitar might look a little bit different than mine. You might be playing an acoustic, or you might be playing an electric guitar that doesn't look like this, but basically all guitars are pretty much the same. They have the same parts, and so all these parts make up the entire guitar. All right, let's talk about the strings and why the frets matter. So starting with the strings, we've got the first string, which is your high E, second string, which is your B, third string, which is your G, fourth string, which is your D, fifth string, which is your A, and your low E, which is your sixth string. So if you can memorize this acronym, Eddie ate dynamite, goodbye Eddie, that should help you learn all the notes that correspond with each string. And if you could remember, counting backwards is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then you're good to go. So E, A, D, G, B, E is called standard tuning. There are other tunings that you can get into later on, but generally whenever you tune a guitar, this is the standard of which most guitars are going to be tuned to. Now you can tune a guitar several ways. You could do it by ear, by memorizing what the note sounds like. You could tune to something like if you play an E on a piano, you know, listening to it that way and trying to match the sounds. You can also buy a string tuner, which I would highly suggest. So there are a few guitar tuners that I would recommend. One is the Polytune 2, which is what I use on my fretboard. However, if you play an acoustic guitar, you might find that it's more helpful to buy a Snark, which is a tuner that attaches to the headstock of your guitar. And of course, you could use this on electric guitars as well, but it clips itself to the headstock of your guitar, and you could turn it off and on. It runs by battery. It's a wonderful tuner. I've used it before. So really, before you get started, you want to make sure your guitar is in tune and you're ready to play. So before we move on, I actually want to talk to you about hand placement. You know, you have to use your hands when you play guitar, obviously. So when you're playing chords, you want to make sure that you are using your fingertips. So on the fretboard, when you place your fingers on the strings, you want to make sure you're not placing it with the meat of your finger like this. You want to make sure you're using the tip of your finger like this. And eventually you'll get used to the feeling. You'll start to develop calluses. That's why guitarists develop calluses, because they're using the tips of their finger to clear the strings or clear the chords. You want to make sure your hand is nice and comfortable. You don't want it to be overly bent like so. You want to make sure that your hand is placed nice and comfortably, ergonomically sound, and you want to pretend that there is a tennis ball in your hand or some kind of racket ball, and you want to gently place your fingers on the string. So if you don't know how to play chords, just practice putting your fingers randomly and make sure you have some space in between your hand like this. So you don't want to be palming the back of the guitar like so. You don't want to have a death grip on the guitar. You know, you want it to be comfortable. You want it to breathe. And also, you'll find that you're gonna start cramping if you're just clutching on the guitar as hard as you can. You don't want that. And secondly, you don't want to hold the guitar with your thumb on the top unless you're doing it on purpose. There are some techniques in guitar chords where sometimes you do, you know, find use in using your thumb, but we're not going to be talking about that today, nor are we going to be talking about that as a regular ergonomically sound way to play guitar in general. So you want to place your thumb nice and gently in the back of the neck or the fretboard, and then just place your hands really gently and softly on the guitar. Make sure you have plenty of space, make sure it's nice and comfortable, make sure you're not straining your wrist either way. And now we can talk about how to actually play the chords. Okay, so if you are looking at the chord diagram for the first time ever, no worries, it's fine. We're gonna get through it together, but you only have to remember just a few things here. If you are getting confused as to how to read the chord diagram, here, let me turn my guitar to what looks like the chord diagram. So if you're looking at the diagram, you notice there's a black bar at the top, there's a bunch of circles or X's up here, and then you have the frets. So if you're starting to see it, good. And all you have to remember is you're reading it sideways. So the challenge really is, which is not a big challenge, is to correspond your fingers that you're using with the fretboard that is now turned sideways looking at the diagram. So all you have to remember, finger number 1 is your index, finger number 2 is your middle finger, 3 is your ring finger, 4 is your pinky, and then you should be able to place your fingers accordingly to which frets the diagram is telling you to use. So if you're looking at the E chord on the E diagram, you're actually playing all the strings. Fun. So you're gonna take your first finger, place it on the first fret on the G string, then you're gonna take your second finger or your middle finger on the A string on the second fret, and then right beneath that, you're gonna take your ring finger, second fret as well on the D string. So the E chord goes like this. Nice and simple. So now that you know how to read chords on chord diagrams, you must be going, well, how do I strum? There's a million different ways that you could strum. That's the truth. There are different rhythms in the world. There's different pacings on the guitar. There's different finger style techniques, different picking techniques. But today we're just gonna talk about the basics of strumming. Now, the best piece of advice I could give you is that you should strum through your wrist. So you wanna be just as loose as possible on the wrist while still maintaining control of the pick or whatever finger you're strumming with. Maybe you're using your fingernail. I see a lot of people when they play guitar for the first time, they're strumming from their elbow. So they do a lot of like that kind of motion. And what you really want to do is just, you want it to be flowy. So like, notice how I'm not using my elbow predominantly. I mean, if you're like in a punk band and you're trying to look cool, different story, but today we're talking about how to comfortably and semi-properly play guitar. So yeah, one of the things you want to practice is being really nice and loose in your wrist and making sure the rhythm is mostly coming from your wrist. So I hope you found this tutorial really helpful. If you are just starting out on guitar, there is a big adventure in front of you. All you have to do is practice every day. And remember, I mean this when I say it, practice means perfect. If you're trying to play guitar fluently, you have to develop muscle memory to play these chords. And really what that means is your fingers memorizing exactly the shape that they need to be in to be able to produce sounds quickly on the guitar. And once you do this over and over again, just practicing every single day, maybe a few times a week, you'll get it in no time. Make sure you sleep on the information that you were taking in, because it does seem like a lot in the beginning, but I promise you, with a lot of practice, you will be able to play guitar, if not by the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Raquel Lily. See you guys later.